Hi, everybody. Happy Tuesday and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from today. So excited for everyone to join. We do wait just a couple of seconds to see everybody join us here. So if you don't mind while we wait, please use the chat box to tell us a little bit more about you, where you're coming from, and signing in today. I see Sahil is here. Well, I'm here. Sriram is here.
Hello,
We're excited. While we wait, we'll give a few more minutes. Oh, Sahil's from India. Yay. Very exciting.
It's always great when we have people from multiple different countries.
Yeah. So, Wisdom is from Paris. I love it. Oh, Amanja Emani. Are you guys related? Sriram Emani and Amanja Emani?
That's my mom.
Hi, Mom. We love Sriram. So thanks for joining us.
She's joined in for support, but she's not applying for an MBA that I know of. But
I mean, she definitely could.
She could.
There's a lot of options out there. So here, awesome. Jakarta, wow, awesome. Super exciting. So as we continue to kind of get things started today, please definitely use the chat box to continue to introduce yourself and tell us where you're coming from. As we get started, I will be moderating the chat box today, so we'll be listening. Yay. Okay, so I think we're at a good point of getting started. So hi, everyone. My name is Jen Turtschanow. I'm CEO of Aringo MBA admissions consulting firm. And today we're going to talk about everything you need to know about MIT Sloan. And we do have an MIT alum, Sriram Emani, with us here today to join us. I'll tell you a little bit more about him, but I'll let him say hello.
Hello, everyone. Great to be here and lovely to see all you guys from so many different countries. Happy to answer all the questions you guys have, talk to you as much about Sloan as I can. And yeah, go ahead, Jen.
Excellent. So a little bit about MIT today. Again, one of the top MBA programs across the globe, M7. Super excited to chat about that. So that's our main topic. Before we jump in, just want to share a little bit about Aringo and our background and kind of why we're here presenting this today. So Aringo is a top MBA admissions consulting firm. We were started 20 years ago by a Wharton alum, and we've been helping people ever since get their MBA. And so we help clients on multiple different levels, but essentially we offer what's called a full school package, and that's comprehensive and unlimited, whether Sriram likes it or not. And so we help with making sure that you know what schools are going to be, within your stretch, reach, target, safety, planning out and mapping out the entire process of when to apply, which round is best for you, creating a strategy of what you need to share, and then help you with writing essays that are authentic to you and not a, AI enabled generic essay. And then we also help you with any sort of assistance with your letters of recommendation, your interview, all of it. We help you with every part of your application, and we're here to be your partner in your MBA applications. And our statistics help show for, exactly how we do this year in, year out with the top MBA programs across the globe. And you can always check our website for more statistics and get to see them there. And then on to the main show today. So we are joined by Sriram Emani. He's a 2014 MIT Sloan grad, and he is one of our senior MBA admissions consultants here at Aringo. We love Sriram. Sriram is not only delightful and super intelligent and an exciting storyteller, but he's also very animated, friendly, and very approachable. And so he's a really great partner in this whole process and working with our clients. I'll share a little bit more about him. So he is, a TEDx speaker. He's a successful entrepreneur. He actually started Indian Raga, his venture, while he was at MIT, and actually is the only international candidate I've ever met that was able to sponsor his own visa as part of his entrepreneurship. So super exciting to kind of get to hear a bit more about that. So Sriram is a natural born storyteller, and he's helped people from over 30 different countries help connect with their audience and tell their stories to brands like HBS, Stanford, MIT, Disney, Lincoln Center, Sony Music, and so many more clients that he's worked with over the years. I think that there's probably a couple more fun caveats about Sriram. He's a Latin ball dancer. And I'm trying to think of some other fun facts to share. You have your photo in New York. You're
I modeled for a Staples ad, and they're using that on posters in New York.
Yes, so he's amazing. But he's here to join us today to really give us the inside scoop on MIT. And from here, I'm going to turn it over to you, Sriram.
Thank you so much, Jen. And it's been super fun also to reiterate working with Aringo. And one of the things I'd love to emphasize on is this idea that you have a team to work with. So I'm usually the primary consultant for my clients, but I get a lot of support, and the clients get a lot of support from the QA team, other consultants in the network. And it just feels like a lovely set of alumni coming together to help the next set of people get into the programs of their choice. I also love the fact that we don't tell you that, oh, just because one thing in your application is weak, then you don't deserve to apply. Like, we've successfully gotten candidates admitted with really low GMAT scores, with not too much of like international experience and all kinds of things that otherwise are considered weak. And that's where the power of storytelling really comes in. And especially coming from a school like MIT, jumping into it, I feel like passion, storytelling, conviction, and vision really make all the difference in this process. And especially at Sloan, you guys might be familiar with the rankings and everything you've heard about the school. But beyond that, it's actually about a very transformational experience that you get from the school, which is why I recommend people to definitely consider MIT. So today in this presentation, we're going to talk a little bit about the school, rankings, numbers, all of that good stuff, but then also like what sets the curriculum apart and what kind of culture and fit is right at MIT. We'll talk a little bit about the really vibrant academic and student life. And remember, MIT is not just MIT Sloan, but the broader MIT campus, filled with some of the most brilliant people I have ever met in my life. Their very strong career development program, a little bit about the employment statistics. Obviously, all of us want to be out there with a job at the end, or with your own startup, as the case may be. And then jump a little bit into what makes or what constitutes a perfect MIT MBA application, because it is so different from every other school out there in a very good way. So remember that, like, for those of you who feel very daunted by the process of, oh my God, the MIT application is so different, it's actually much simpler. It's actually a no BS, get straight to the point kind of an application. I love it. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that. So having set the agenda, I think, Jen, if that's okay, I'm just going to tell everyone, you can feel free to drop in questions and comments in the chat box as we go. If it's relevant to the slide I'm speaking about, we'll definitely answer them, or we can just keep them till the end, or maybe take a Q&A session in the middle. So feel free to engage, drop it in so we know how it's going. Let's get to the next slide.
Yeah, and Sriram, I forgot to share. Everybody give us a like on this presentation, share it with your friends. The more, the better. You do have a star amongst you. It's me. I mean, it's Sriram. So make sure to give us a thumbs up as we go through the presentation today as well. And I will be moderating the comments.
Great. So on the next slide, we're going to get started with, and Jen, I think I might need, can I control it? I cannot, right?
Maybe. Nope. Might be me.
Got to be you. That's fine. MIT definitely is one of the best business schools in the world. You have all of these fancy rankings, The Economist and Forbes and Financial Times and everything. But let me, as someone who's been doing this for about 8 years now, tell you that rankings are one thing, but really those of us in the admissions world really know which ones are the best. So even if MIT slips a little bit here, I'm seeing Financial Times ranking number 11. That makes no sense to me. Like MIT certainly is one of the top 3 or 4 programs that people, all clients of mine, have been really rooting for it and trying to apply to it. So it's a very highly ranked program. There's a bunch of different things people need to understand about it, which is, it's part of the broader MIT community, and you have access not just to the Sloan resources, but also the broader MIT community. Next slide, please. It's one of those like legacy schools. Been there since 1925. They know what they're doing. It's fall intake only, and it's now a STEM MBA. So for those of you who are international candidates worried about the OPT situation, it's a STEM program now. So that means you get 3 full years to get your H-1B after you graduate. It's a 2-year program, which I highly recommend. Business school flies by, like it just like really flies by. So if you're looking for a transformational experience, trust me, a 2-year MBA program is worth it. You have the tuition class size. It's one of the smallest programs in the world, and that also makes it extra competitive. So that's one of the reasons why it's also so daunting for people to apply to, because it's really tiny. And in terms of like the salaries, the median GMAT scores, everything, it's pretty up there. They are big, and that's also because of the highly competitive nature of it. It is one of the most diverse programs I have encountered, and of course, I've seen quite a few programs over the years, but they really mean it. They're not only diverse in terms of their intake, but they're also very diverse in terms of the international experience that they offer through their programs and resources. Next slide. The first semester at Sloan is one of the things that sets it apart from other schools. So the core is the only mandatory semester at Sloan. And in the core semester, you have a bunch of leadership and data related courses that really set you up for a very great experience in the rest of your MBA. Those of you who come in with really strong accounting or finance backgrounds can at times request the Sloan team for a waiver and takes another course instead, simply because you already probably know what the core course offers. So in that sense, it's a very flexible program. That's one of the things that was really exciting for me, because I wanted to focus on the creative and entertainment industry, and also entrepreneurship. And if I sit doing, advanced corporate finance, which I had like no use for, there was really no need for me to do all of those. So the flexibility of the curriculum, the ability to cross-register for any course or most of the courses in the rest of MIT, including the media lab, including the engineering departments, and also being able to cross-register for courses at Harvard Business School and Harvard University, makes it a very powerful academic experience. And that's one thing to really remember about MIT, that you can design your own curriculum in a way that suits you and your goals best. And you get a lot of support in terms of mentorship and people, advising you on, all of these aspects. You're divided at the beginning into 6 cohorts. Each of them is called an ocean. I was in the Pacific Ocean, and that's the group you start off with, and then that's a group you start off with and build your first set of relationships. But because it's only 408 people, I pretty much knew almost every single classmate of mine. So it's also like a great way. It's the right size of program to get to know as many people as you can. Next slide.
Yeah. Oh, Sriram, before you go to the next slide, I was listening to a talk that Donna was giving the other day, and she was talking about beyond the core, that there is like a strong chance you're going to mix with people from every other program when you're doing your electives. And so you're building this cross-sectional, not just people from your cohort, but like from across MIT and even Sloan, where you're going to be mixed amongst each other, and you get to learn from other people from different practices.
I'll give you a few examples right there. So in my very second semester, there were people from the systems design and management program that were part of our courses. and they had cross-registered and come in. And one of them actually pointed me to the application for the Tata Fellowship, which at the time was not open for MBA students. But because he thought my profile would be relevant, he suggested I apply, and I applied and I got in. And that's a great example of like sharing resources and really sort of having the interactions across, different cohorts. I've had the students in my classmates from, Harvard University, Harvard Business School, Media Lab, from the engineering teams. There's a very fun course. This one I don't remember if they still offer. It's called the Art, Science, and Business of Video Games, that was offered across one of the MIT departments. I got to go and like sit in on that and register for it. So it is a very rich, diverse mix. There's also electives like iTeams, where there is patent pending technology that is made available to students, and then they work with students from other like computer science, from electrical engineering, mechanical, to really start thinking about concepts and business models that could be successful launches for those technologies. So it is true. There is a very wide diversity of it. And yeah, to your point.
And then Vishy wants to know, do you get to choose the cohort that you're part of or the school that you're going to be, I think, attending the classes in?
So the cohorts are assigned to you, but the cohorts are just randomly assigned. So all cohorts have the same experience. They go through the same core curriculum. It's just more for ease and guidance. But then as you go through the rest of the electives, depending upon the elective, you'll see a good mix of candidates. So there is an elective called Linked Data Ventures, which is all about coding and technology being used to develop interesting business models. That tends to see more of like computer science, Sloan, electrical engineering, kind of a mix. Then there is Media Ventures, which is where I wrote the business plan first for Indian Raga, which sees a really strong, diverse mix from across all of the campus, because it's at the Media Lab, and that's a very interesting program for many different departments. So that way you can pick, and that's the beauty of it. The cohort is just the first semester. And then the remaining 3 semesters, you can pick any and all of these electives and go and design and craft your own experience, if that answers the question.
I think so. Vishy, if we need any more clarification, let us know. Beyond that, we can keep going on. I know that you've already covered a little of this. Sorry, I was
no, great. So 3 semesters, 144 units. That's all like detail. And then some students opt for writing thesis in the second year. So if you, and I've had a few classmates who really wanted to focus on a specific idea that they wanted to research further in preparation for launching their companies. And so they spent the second year, a big part of it, writing a thesis instead of having to take electives that they did not want to. There is also something called the International Study Tour. So if you think Sloan does not have something in its curriculum that you're interested in, you can design a half semester course, and then you can visit 2 countries over spring break by leading a team of 25 students. So I had actually done that. I said Sloan, or any business school for that matter, does not have too much going on about the entertainment industry in particular. So I created a course called The Business of Creativity. And then we get 5 guest lectures, and you can pick who you want to teach each of those classes. And then 25 students and I led them to go to Japan and South Korea to visit Disney Japan, Dentsu Japan, Samsung, and a lot of like creative companies in Japan and South Korea. So that was a beautiful experience, something that made my experience so much richer in the field of my choice. Sloan also offers tracks: finance, entrepreneurship and innovation, enterprise management. These tracks, they're not so that does not mean you get an MBA in finance. What it means is you still get an MBA, but the track helps you understand how to navigate, because there's so many electives. It just makes it easier for you to find the right ones and specialize in a certain field if you want. You can also combine certificate requirements, so sustainability certificate, healthcare certificate, if you want to specialize in that space. So that option's available as well. I'm seeing a question about the track, which is about, can you take courses from another track? The track usually does not limit you too much, in the sense that you still have a few other electives every semester that you can take outside of that. But if it does get limiting, then I, for example, started with the entrepreneurship and innovation track, but I think in my third semester, I dropped out of it, which is fine, simply because the track, and they tell you that too, they tell you that the track is just there for you to make it easy to find the electives. But during the process, if you find something else that you're interested in, go for it. The one thing about MIT that I'll tell you is that their emphasis is less on bureaucracy and hierarchy and more on you finding something that you're passionate about studying. So, in compared to most other schools, you take a course, and then I think almost very close to the end of the semester, if you feel like you want to drop it, you can drop it, which is just insane to me. But they're just like, if you don't want to study it, there is no point of us forcing you to take it. So it's super flexible, guys. Like, it just like makes it very easy for you to exactly study what you want. You're not going to be forced to do anything that you don't like. There's dual degree options available. Like, I had a whole bunch of friends who did the Sloan and HKS dual degree. There's the LGO program that's very highly ranked and rated. That's about 50 spots, I believe. And you have a bunch of other, dual degree options that you can pursue.
And then, Sriram, do you know much about the LGO and the difference of kind of the curriculum between the 2-year and the LGO?
Yeah, usually in the first core semester, you also are formed into your core teams of 6 or 7 students, and one of them is usually an LGO student. And their curriculum will have additional courses related to LGO, the operations program. They have to spend a little bit extra time over the summer finishing some more course requirements for it. It's a little bit more intense than the traditional MBA. And then the career support that's offered, they actually have companies that have historically been sponsoring operations-related internships. So for those who are very sure that you want to get into an operations field, it is a fantastic program. It just literally takes you into some of the best operations-related options that are there. I would say the career support offered is more catered and particular for the LGO program. It's really well done.
Excellent. And I know that we have a question about the MIT Sloan Fellows, which is like the senior version of a full-time MBA, and about the difference of the candidacy. We can jump into that a little bit towards the end, unless you have something to contribute right now about that.
I can take that again later, but I do know what to speak about that, sure. But we can keep going for now.
Okay. Is the digital PROD management certificate required if you have scaled agile? Sorry, emails are coming in and blocking this. So is it required if you have scaled an agile certificate?
So that would be a question for AdCom. Like, I wouldn't want to comment on their course requirements. That would not be right, because if the scaled agile certificate is not part of the Sloan program, then you need to check in with AdCom if they're transferable, and you can do that, unfortunately. But yeah, I would check with AdCom about that.
Yeah, and they're very open, so you can always access. And I don't know, Sriram, how much you did this, but the AdCom is very open. Like, if you have questions about this, and especially since their curriculum is so different and has so many different options, they really are there as a resource, and they really are very welcoming whenever you approach them, either via email, phone call, or even joining one of their webinars. So
yeah, and it's also only 400 students, so AdCom is not crazy overloaded. You know what I mean? It's a very personalized experience. I love it. Yeah. All right. So is MIT right for me? The way I would think about it is that the MIT Sloan DNA is not very different, in my opinion, from the MIT DNA, which is all about, is there something that you're intensely passionate about? MIT is not a school where, at least I did not ever feel pressured to do one of the standard consulting, finance, tech thing. In a lot of schools, like, that's a thing everybody wants to do. And so, there is nothing else. But at Sloan, everyone, at least all the people I met, had a very particular, specific passion that they were interested in. And everybody around them would go out of their way to help them achieve that. So if you're someone who's really looking for, it could be a startup, it could be you transitioning into another industry, it could be you wanting to learn something specific that you think will be helpful in future. If you have a passion, MIT is definitely right for you. You definitely have the STEM benefit. fantastic faculty. There's Nobel Prize winners. The faculty members are just, I mean, I don't even feel like I'm qualified enough to comment on them. That's how good they are. They're just like the best in what they do, always available, very, very open in terms of conversation and discussion. And I have benefited so much, even though my company, Indian Raga, is more in the entertainment industry. But speaking to people from systems dynamics, speaking to people from the media lab, all of that has really added value to help me bring in those concepts into what we do. So it's great in that sense. They have a fantastic alumni network, which is not just Sloan again, it's also MIT. In fact, in the first 2 months that I joined, I actually reached out to so many MIT alumni, not just Sloan, and like reached out and said, "Hey, I just joined. I'd love to have a 15-minute conversation." And so many people responded and spoke to me, like VCs, research fellows, and all kinds of great people. If you thrive in a multicultural environment, that's again a great place for you. It's very global in its outlook. It's very student driven. So it's a culture that is not so much about we're going to do everything for you and you just have to be spoon fed. It's more about if you have a passion or the energy to do something, we will support you. So it's a very student proactive culture. There is strong emphasis on analytics in a healthy way. Like it's not crazy about numbers just because it's MIT, but they really help you understand how you can bring your intuition together with data-backed insights. And the spirit of data-based innovation, or like innovation in general, is great. So if all of that sounds right to you, then yes, MIT would be a great program for you. When is MIT not right for you? MIT would not be the place for you if you just want to sit back and relax and just have somebody else driving the whole thing for you. Then MIT is not the right place for you. If you're someone who's just simply looking to go in for a very quick degree and coming out and don't really care about, other aspects of the program, then of course that's, it's kind of lost on you, the value of it. If there's more, I'll think about it. But like, in all the cases, MIT would be a great program.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Sure. I feel like you mentioned this to me one time, is that there's, is it like a Thursday night kind of thing, like where everybody introduces something different? Tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, the C function, it's probably my best set of memories from MIT. So I think alternate Thursdays, I believe, the school, it's designated for a culture C function. So for example, if it is the Korean C function, then that Thursday evening, we all gather in a big, hall, and we all learn Korean choreography, and probably some of us dance in, something from there. I actually sang a small segment of a K-pop song in Korean, and my Korean classmates actually like coached me on the pronunciation and the meaning of it. There's Korean food that night, all sponsored by the school. There is beer sponsored by the school. It's always great when the school sponsors beer. And you get to know about that country and that culture from people of that culture. And so that, I think, is a great testament to how the school really does everything possible to bring people together, regardless of where they're from. And that's one of the best places to form lasting friendships, in my opinion.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. Should we move on, or is there questions we need to take based on this?
I think there's some that we can answer at the end about like finances and stuff. So
okay, sounds good. Learning methodology. MIT has a beautiful, and I think the right mix of case study-based teaching and action-based learning. So you have study groups in each of your courses that you work on assignments collectively with. And in the class, you're expected to sort of like come in with insights or your own approach to solving a certain case. And you do, in some classes where it makes sense, you do the case-based approach, and you have like people playing different roles, and you do that. But then you also have courses where you actually go and do stuff. So the G Lab and the E Lab and all of these different labs at MIT, you actually go and spend some time working with the company or the startup and actually implementing the concepts that you have learned in class. And so the learning philosophy is something that is really about it's like I see, I hear, I forget, I see, I remember, I do, I understand. So like when you do is when you understand, is the philosophy there. Student life, so many clubs. The clubs are the best part, actually. I was the co-president of the Media, Entertainment, and Sports Club, and we organized treks to visit companies in New York, in Los Angeles. We hosted, a conference. I organized a whole bunch of panels. That's where I met a lot of different people from the entertainment industry. So you have clubs for everything: professional, for art and culture, for sports and recreation. So that's a very, very vibrant student life. And you can join, clubs and associations across the entire campus. I mean, Boston in general is a student city. So, you just have so much going on that there's never any dearth. For partners and families, you definitely have clubs. The SO, the significant others, you have a club for them specifically. You have, I think, two buildings, two or three of them that are specifically close to campus and for married couples or couples with kids. So there is a lot of support for them from the school. In many of the events, you have the ability to bring them with you to interact with the broader community. And so you have a lot of support for them too.
Yeah, and I think somebody had asked earlier about, is it possible to live on campus if you're married?
Yeah.
And if you just have 2 seconds to talk about the living situation, does everybody live on campus at MIT?
So in the first semester, you have the option. I think there are a lot of student dorms and grad student dorms, and you have to apply to get a spot there. And so if you get a spot in there, and for those who are single, there's separate dorms, and for those who are married, there are separate dorms. So at least to my knowledge, and I don't want to speak for everyone, but to my knowledge, most of the couples I knew who wanted to stay on campus were able to get accommodation on campus. But there's some fantastic options available off campus too. So in my first semester, I stayed in a student dorm, and then in my second year, I moved off campus just because I was already familiar with the place. So both options are great. Everything's really close by to campus, and they have shuttles running like every 15 minutes. It's super convenient.
Yeah, and these clubs, I mean, like if you have like an affinity club or a cultural club, or like even the significant others club, like if you want to access them and talk to them about, what life is like there,
Yeah.
these clubs, they have contacts that you can reach out to, whether that's through the admissions team or even on the Sloan website, and you can have conversations with them. So just know that like it's not something that you don't get to access until you're admitted or until you get on campus, but there's definitely a lot of insight that you can gain from talking to these current students.
Yeah. And Vishy, you're right. The sky is definitely the limit at MIT. So yeah, you're right on that. Right.
Awesome. I did have one more question kind of come in about already having Deadbook has a business already and wanted to do an MBA to broaden perspective and also expose be exposed to different cultures. Is MIT the right fit?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely it is. In fact, I've not only had many classmates who had already tried launching businesses or had an existing business going on, but even in terms of many of our clients at Aringo, Jen, we have so many of them who are either they have a family business and they are about to become CEO or senior management in a few years. And before that, they want to do an MBA to really build the network, get the best practices, have some different exposure before they come back. We just got a whole bunch of them admitted to different schools. So yeah, I think it's always great to, and I believe there is a family business club too, if I'm not wrong, but maybe we can always double check that. So whether it's a family business or your own business, the entrepreneurship and innovation track is actually really strong because you get, you would already be familiar with a lot of the dilemmas that come with running your own business. And so then you can take that next step in getting the support that you need. And so, yeah, it's a great time. It is a great fit. It's a perfect fit, actually.
Awesome. All right. We're ready to move on?
Yeah.
Excellent. Career development.
Career Development Office is insanely supportive and one of the loveliest people I have ever met. And they start off by giving you advice on, crafting your resume in the right way. So you can, sign up for individual one-on-one sessions with them. Each of the student clubs also run their own, interview prep sessions or resume prep sessions for specific. So the Management Consulting Club will run it for those who are interested in a career in management consulting and so on. And so you will be assigned people that can help and support you. Now, again, MIT already has a lot of companies that come to campus for recruitment. But if it is maybe startups, or if it is, industries like media entertainment, where traditionally companies don't go to campus, then the career development office can actually guide you on how you can reach out to alumni, either through the MIT network or otherwise, or like remind you of like people from the recent years and connect you with them, so you can sort of get their advice and support and make that happen for you. They use a lot of technology, peer support for making all of this happen. The alumni connection through the MIT Industry Advisors program. These are all, I mean, there's a few listed here, and you can obviously read more about it. And there's so much more, but trust me, if there is any sector and you want to get connected to people, MIT is bound to have alumni in that space, and it's going to be super easy to connect with them. So again, this is one of those slides where if you have specific questions, I'm happy to take them. But otherwise, it's like one of the strongest career development resources of any business school.
All right.
Great. This has a lot of numbers. If this is relevant to you, you should take a look at it. But I mean, top industries. Yeah, I just want to comment on the top industries. Like it says consulting, finance, technology, and healthcare, simply because people have loans to pay off. And, the consulting companies and finance companies are a great way to just like work for 2 years, pay off the loan, and then do something else nicer in life. So that's the reason you have them at the top. But I personally know many, many students, including myself, who have gotten into startups, or who have gotten into VCPE, or who have gotten into industries of their choice, including media entertainment. Also, during my time, we only had the 1-year OPT. So that was another reason, because of the visa, that international students would have to get into one of these standard companies. But now that you have a 3-year OPT, I think you can take a few more risks and do much better on that one. And then you have some industry statistics there, functions, business analytics, business development. Yeah, usually it's mostly project management, product management, business development, strategy are the kind of roles that you get into, like any of the top programs. So I don't know, we could either just leave it there for them to read it a little bit, or answer questions.
Yeah, and I just grabbed this information from if you just, I just Googled it, but MIT Sloan MBA employment report, and you can do that for any school. And this is a great way to really look at, okay, is the right industry, the right function there? Is this going to give me the career that I'm looking for? And when you start looking at the breakdown of the statistics, it really just helps you say, okay, this is the right place. They have the right employers. And I think like when Sriram and I were talking about this presentation, he's like, I hate that it feels like, oh, you can only go into consulting, finance, or technology, or healthcare because you're in Boston. But, there's so much more that people are doing. And so I just wanted to kind of expand that a little bit here for people to see.
Yeah, I'll just tell you that, like, if you write to anyone, like I actually wrote to the National Endowment for the Arts, which is like a non-government nonprofit, because I'm interested in that space. And you just tell them that, like, I'm a student at MIT and I would love to pick your brain for 15 minutes, or I'd love to apply for opportunities there. They're not going to say no. I mean, people just really love engaging with students from MIT. There is a certain brand pedigree aura that comes with it. So don't get too swayed or too obsessed with these numbers and statistics, because numbers and statistics only tell you one side of the story. But there's so much more you can do with the MIT brand, that I would rather that you just go with that intuition.
Yeah. And I mean, like even the statistic here of like 49 people last year were graduating and starting their own business. So, yeah. I mean, that's amazing. Or 62 of them are returning to a business. So, yeah. I mean, that's a quarter of the class that's, already has things figured out.
Yeah, which is right. Like, I mean, 10% of the class is already starting companies. And then maybe the remaining ones, went to something for 1 or 2 years to pay off their loans and then jump back in. So, it's sometimes a financial reality that drives this than anything else. So, yeah.
All right. So a couple of things. So
companies, are you based on your previous job that you did, or based on your new interests you may have got during the MBA? So companies will hire you as soon as you go in, the very first thing you do is to start applying to internships. So your internship is a function. If you're going through the career development office, then sometimes yes, your past experience does matter. But I'm going to spend a few minutes on this because it's an elaborate answer, right? So if you are someone who is not looking to do a very dramatic sector transition, then yes, they look at your past experience. So if you're looking into tech, they'll be like, great, what's your tech experience before and what you've done? If you are looking to transition industries, like in my case, I was looking to go from nonprofit. I did consulting and then nonprofit performing arts, and then I wanted to get into entertainment. So before joining the MBA program, I did an internship with Ernst and Young in India, like a pre-MBA internship related to strategy in entertainment consulting. And so I use that as part of my resume to demonstrate interest. Sometimes if you just go for the networking events with the company and like really impress upon them that you may not have had past experience in that space, but here's all the work you've been doing. You spoke to a few people at the company, you did some coffee chats, you've really gotten like a few credentials or online courses that you've done, and you really would love to sort of explore the internship, then of course they would be happy to interview you and sort of like consider you for it. So I think it really depends upon how dramatic that transition is, and hence how much work you put in to show that you're actually serious about it. So the answer lies across the spectrum, if that helps.
Excellent. And then I also kind of listed a lot of the top employers here.
Yeah. So all of the top companies love MIT Sloan because it's people with a passion. It's people who are very diverse, very humble. It's insanely humble. Like I had like classmates who've written songs for Beyonce, and like she didn't even tell this to me unless till we went like very deep into a conversation. Like no one's like boasting about themselves. Like these are highly accomplished people. So they all love them, like BCG, McKinsey, all of these guys, all the top tech companies, all the top finance companies. It's a great mix of intuition based sense making and also like data driven new age approaches and business models. So yeah, and I'm not surprised they have fantastic employers.
All right. Shall we move on?
I would love to, unless people want to like read that a little bit more. Okay, so now based on all of this, hopefully you do want to get into MIT. So how does it help, and what do you need to do? So MIT is really looking for people, like I said again, who have a passion, who have strong leadership, and leadership doesn't have to mean just direct reports, but leadership in terms of leading an initiative and seeing it through, and really encountering problems, thinking about changing status quo, being able to come up with interesting solutions and making something happen and changing something for the better. And also people who are very humble, who appreciate diversity or have a strong background in diversity, and who are just basically fundamentally nice people who will make for good, ethical, accomplished leaders. What does that specifically mean? Let's look at the next slide to go into. So you have your prerequisites, obviously, GMAT and GRE, the fee, the transcripts, etc. The application itself is a one-page resume, which has some specifications of font size and everything, so that way it's all standardized. The resume is a place where you would highlight the diversity of the skills that you have: leadership, analytical ability, communication skill. And again, it's not that every single segment has to have every single skill, but when you scan the resume from top to bottom, right from your education to professional accomplishments to who you are outside as a person, we just need to be able to get a mix of these really interesting, diverse skills. So that's the goal, and that's what we specialize at Aringo in, helping you create a balanced resume that stands out. Just remember, no one's reading the resume for like a full hour. They're just like quickly scanning, right? They just need to quickly see all the most important things. So the lesser, the better, but the more impactful, the better. The cover letter is really MIT's way of just like you writing a letter to them. It's personal and just telling them, this is why I'm so accomplished. This is why MIT is such a great place. And this is how the two of us fit together really well. So I'd love to join. It's as simple as that. And they deliberately leave out goals because MIT doesn't, and they actually told us many times there that we hope that the MIT Sloan experience is so powerful that you have the ability to change your goals based on all of those resources and become successful. So we don't really care as much about your exact goals. What I think they do care about is the passion that you have and what you've done about it. And so it's really interesting for them to see that through your childhood influences, you've had a certain set of influences or inspiration, and then you followed up on that. And then you've started doing something about it. And then now you're at a position where a bunch of these resources will help you take that to the next level. And hence you're ready for the MBA. And that's the story that needs to come out. And that, again, is a detailed process that you work with a consultant on to bring your personal and professional experiences and influences together to tell a coherent story. The video statement is for them to see your personality. And I love that they make it really simple. There's no like fancy editing required, nothing. In fact, they say you cannot edit single shot. It's more about you speaking to them and for them to see the genuine personality behind who you are. And the cover letter and video statement, for me at least, complement each other. And so we work on what the cover letter is saying, and then how does a video statement enhance it? Or how does a video statement give you a very different dimension to your personality based on your profile? I also love that they only have one letter of recommendation, so you're not having to manage like two whole people, but it's like one who's able to give very strong feedback about your accomplishments. They have the organizational chart, which obviously people think has to be really complex, but absolutely not. I mean, it's one of the simplest documents they're ever supposed to be. And I often like make people dumb it down 90%. They just want to see where you lie in the organizational hierarchy. And according to that, what kind of leadership have you demonstrated? So that's the thing. And then the online application, which just asks a bunch of factual questions. And then the interview, which I think is one of the most pleasant aspects of the MIT Sloan admissions process. So Jen, if you want me to add something more, I'm happy to, but else we can also move on.
Well, and the only thing I'll say is that the MIT application is not open yet. So this is all based on last year. I think we're going to dive into a couple parts a little bit more, but beyond that, just know that the parameters are from last year. So I believe, nope, that was it. So I think that, just know that, things are always subject to change. And so just make sure you're paying attention to the details.
Yeah. And so within all of these documents, these are the qualities that need to really reflect. So leadership and an ability to inspire others. And that's very important. It's not leadership where you've been given authority, so you impose it, but it's leadership that has been able to inspire people to join your vision and accomplish great things. Collaboration is a big thing at MIT. They actually tell you that in today's day and age, it's impossible for a leader to be everything. You cannot be an inspiring, charismatic leader and insanely fantastic with numbers and very strong with intuition and have a fantastic global network and have, like cross-cultural background experiences. You need to identify which of those you have and then surround yourself and collaborate with people who can bring the other aspects to your leadership and personality. So they need to see that you're someone who is able to work with others and build community around yourself. Intellectual curiosity and analytical strength, they kind of go hand in hand. It's about you see something which might not be working. How curious are you about it? Like, are you able to go and analyze what is causing it? How are you able to change it? How have you transformed it? And what has the final form taken? And if you were to go back and do it differently, what have you learned from that experience? So that's a great thing that they really look at seeing. In fact, to the point, I encourage a lot of my clients to actively talk about failure because they love it. They really think that like the greatest leaders have had the greatest failures. And so it's important to actively speak about what you've learned from it. Creativity to generate new solutions to existing challenges, like I spoke about, and growth in both professional and personal endeavors, because it's not just about all hard work and no play. It's about people who are balanced, who are interesting and who are able to balance, growth personally as well as professionally. So they're really looking for that mix of, this already sounds like a fantastic individual, and that's what the class is made and comprised of. And Vishy, what is that? Should the org chart be generic or specific? I'm not sure what that means. Is it there's guidelines. Obviously, you have to show where you are. So they just want to see the designations from the top to bottom, but there's a balance of specificity. You don't have to put everybody's names and faces and all of that, but you also should put a few that are important. So that's really what the consultant works with you to get you to achieve that balance.
Got it. And so I think that we should probably like ask the big question. I'm not an engineer. Should I apply to MIT? Am I going to get in if I'm not an engineer?
Oh my God, of course. What do you think? I mean, Sloan is looking for a balanced class. How boring is it going to be again in a class of engineers? So I don't think engineering played a role really for a lot of my classmates' admission to Sloan. I've had someone who worked at a publishing house as an editor for the longest time. I had someone who wrote songs for Beyonce, like I mentioned, and then was like a performing artist, like a recording artist. And then I've had people who have launched their own companies in sustainability, in sustainable apparel, things like that. I've had people who've come in with very interesting nonprofit backgrounds in education or in climate change, and people who are Teach for America fellows or Teach for India fellows. I've had such a broad diversity that I actually have to sit and think about which of my classmates were actually engineers. So no, that's a complete misconception. It's not a school just for engineers at all.
And it's really funny. I mean, I think I'm way off script at this point, Sriram.
Yeah.
But usually when people talk about like this passion and wanting to make a difference, I often think of like Stanford or Haas, but it sounds like MIT should be kind of really right up there at the same kind of spot of thinking, if you want to make a difference and if you've tried to do it one way and need more to get to where you want to be, that like MIT could definitely be the right place for you.
Yeah, I think what a lot of people forget is that Silicon Valley makes a lot of noise about, the VCs and the tech stuff that came out of that, and like all the people, and California being the state that it is, like really enhance that image and all of that. But MIT is not any different at all. In fact, especially when it comes to healthcare and pharma, Boston has become such a huge hub of innovation. There are so many venture capitalists, private equity companies in here who are actually actively engaged in supporting so many different kinds of startups that, yeah, absolutely, you're right. And, MIT, I do not think is, in fact, I've actually seen the diversity of innovation and entrepreneurship at MIT is far, far more interesting to me than Silicon Valley, because it's not just tech; it's other interesting upcoming fields. And yeah, absolutely, it's just MIT tends to be a little bit more of a humble school. They don't like actively brag as much and make all this like hoopla and noise about it, but like it's MIT. I mean, yeah.
All right. So now I think we're diving in just a little bit on the specific parts of the application.
Yeah, so the resume always, actually, be it for MIT or any school, but specifically for MIT, should, if your company, so MIT is not obsessed. It's not obsessed with known brands. So a lot of people ask me like, oh, but nobody knows my company. That's fine. Like that's the reason you should give a strong company description as to what it does, and then what's impressive about your accomplishment, so that they know. So if you say I generated $5 million revenue, great, but like, why was that a great accomplishment? Is that because, it's 50% of your company's revenue last year, or is it because that's the single biggest client you've ever had? So it's important to clarify that. Highlight any awards and honors and certifications you've had, and then all of these, how does it connect to that passion? So if I'm seeing somebody who seems to be saying in the cover letter that I'm sort of interested in solving climate change, and then everything in the resume is all about, oh, I did something in consulting or finance or blah, 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 etc., and it has like no connection at all, then that becomes a bit of a disconnect. And so it's important that they're all telling one story and not like multiple different stories. And then quantifying your impact. Like any strong business leader, whether you're into numbers or not, has to be able to quantify your impact. Like if you say, I brought two more clients, like, great, that's awesome. Or like, actually, let's start with, I brought more clients to the company versus I brought two more clients to the company. Or I negotiated and started like two, annual recurring clients that ensure guaranteed revenue of like $10 million a year. Which one is most impactful? Like, that. So the more numbers you use to quantify, the better. And that's one of the things we aggressively work on at Aringo, because that's what makes it a confident, uh, candidate who is aware and has thought about what they've accomplished and why that's meaningful, versus someone who's just quickly scribbled something. So the example here does a good job of that too. I'm a lawyer dealing with real estate versus I'm the head of the biggest law firm in Germany, leading a team of four, responsible for projects ranging from 10 to 30 million. You can already see the big difference there. So the resume has to be really specific and tell a single coherent story about who you are. Right.
And let me tell you, this is definitely like one of the hardest parts, I think, that clients usually struggle with in the very beginning is how do you quantify your impact? And so, as you're preparing for your MBA applications, I think it's going back and reflecting on what you've done, and trying to find some numbers that you can. If not, we can kind of work on some estimations as well to kind of help that. But
That
I
is, you're
know
right.
that a lot of clients struggle.
Yeah, that is a biggest struggle for everyone, and I get it. And I've gone through the process too, and that's why we're here to help. But you do ultimately have to get to a place where you've done some kind of like meaningful, reasonable, close enough estimate that quantifies your impact. But you're right, that is easier, harder than it sounds.
Yeah. And Sahil, we're gonna broach your question about your setback when we get to the special essay, and then a little bit about a specific profile on org chart question. So let's go through the rest of this application real quick, and then we can answer some of these along the way or at the very end as well.
Yeah. Okay, so the MIT MBA resume also, it's important. Oh my God, and for everyone who's applying to Sloan, I have to clarify, they're not only interested in academics. And I don't know who's been telling you all of that. They're so interested. At least one third or maybe more of my own interview was about my extracurricular activities and not about my academic. In fact, there were no questions on my academic profile. And I had only applied and gotten in after 3 years of experience, 3 years of work ex, so 4 by the time I joined. Nothing about my academics. It was all about my professional experience and especially my extracurricular activities. Are you somebody who's interesting to be part of this classroom? So for the academic part of it, sure, you can talk about, people talk about their thesis. I mean, nobody wants to know about your thesis. Like, it's more about like, what's the student leadership that you did? Are you somebody who's able to balance academic stuff with student leadership and other activities? Did you do well at what you did you get any awards or scholarships and things like that? Like, what did you volunteer or spend your time doing outside of the classroom? And then the extracurricular activities, it is about does it reflect what you claim your passion is? Like, I've had people who are sort of like, oh, I'm all about climate change, etc., and their work experience had nothing about it. I'm like, that's fine. Maybe you want to transition sectors. But even if your extracurriculars don't have anything about it, I'm like, are you really passionate about it? Because if you are, that's all you would be doing once you finish work. You know what I mean? So it's got to sort of have things in there that show that you engage with what you claim you're passionate about. And then it can supplement who you are, but also strengthen your candidacy. So if you don't have strong leadership at work, for example, like there's some like market research, for example, positions where you don't manage teams, then maybe your extracurriculars could be a great way. You maybe organized a local football league, or you organize, I don't know, like hackathons, or you organize, potlucks, whatever, doesn't matter. Something interesting where you do bring people together and lead them, right? So it can be a great way to showcase. So don't forget the extracurricular part of it. I think that last chunk at the bottom, to me personally, really, really differentiates your candidacy.
I agree.
And then the resume specification, this again, once they release it this year, just double check what they have, but they specify exactly how they want your resume to look and how it needs to be ordered. So that's the specification here. The essays, or in the case of MIT, the cover letter, make sure you're answering the question. So the cover letter, the prompt itself is really detailed. And they do talk about the fact that MIT is looking for a certain type of leader who is able to advance management practice, doesn't hesitate to challenge status quo. So make sure that's reflected in what you're writing. Because if you've ignored the prompt, then they're like, did you even read it? So you have to make sure that by the time you're done with it, the prompt reflects your response, or like it is reflected in your response. Word limit, absolutely. Like I have never had a client submit anything beyond word limit. Never. Always within
Not to the school, just to you, right?
Oh my God. Yeah. To me, they sometimes do like 2x or 3x of it. And I'm like, sure, I'm happy to help, but not while submitting, not even a word over. Promote your candidacy is fine. Include the research you've done. Obviously, every school knows that you're applying to multiple programs. So the only way you can show them that you're actually serious about them is to show how much research you've done. Have you spoken to people at the school? Who have you spoken to? What have they told you about it that uniquely resonates with you? What are some of the resources at the school that are obviously amazing for you? So that way they know that you're actually going to make the most of the program. And then most importantly, how can you contribute to their community? Like what do you bring uniquely and what do you look forward to doing? So these are all elements that you can bake into the cover letter, even though it's only 300 words, but you should be able to say all of this within that and make it really crisp. And being specific always helps. So instead of the single biggest thing I see people doing is through my wealth of experience in IT over the last 5 years, I can bring insights to the classroom. Everybody can do that. That does not make you unique. What is it specifically? Have you done something specifically about writing patents for AI that a lot of new entrepreneurs might struggle with? Or is it about like the changing landscape of IT that you have specifically been positioned at? Like, I mean, we can talk more about this and I can go on forever, but it has to be specific and interesting and engaging instead of something very broad that like 10,000 other people can also say, if you know what I mean.
Vishy has a question about highlighting or leveraging her experience or their experience in the arts in the MIT application. Any advice?
So MIT is not Sloan, but MIT overall, their mission statement actually has both arts and science mentioned. So it is a school that uniquely understands and acknowledges the power of the arts in your formative process. So let's not think of arts as any different from like science and engineering. Some of the best scientists and engineers also have very strong artistic pursuits. So you should be able to talk about like what do you do in your artistic pursuit and like what it has added to you. You can either do that in the essays by saying that through my training in ballet, I have actually learned to understand the importance of balance before launching into something risky. It could be something on those lines if it's relevant, or it could be in the resume at the bottom to show how it has been an avenue for leadership for you. So that's how you can do that. But that's not just because I'm the founder of Indian Rug. I would say that to anyone in any field, actually. Should we take a few more? I'm seeing a few more quick questions. I'll just run them through. Is the org chart only for a current company? It is the current full-time company. How do you quantify your impact when you work in consulting? Oh my God, that's a place where you can absolutely quantify. Like, what's the value of the project you've done? How many people you've led? How much, efficiency, how much money you saved? In fact, that's the easiest place to quantify compared to many other places. So anything about it that says numbers. So you just got to put the impact you have, number of people in the team, cross-functional, how many people you've led, or, a number of those. And again, some of this could be specific to your project, and that's where it'll have to be a more specific conversation. But it's very easy to quantify your work in consulting, in my opinion.
And then maybe this is go ahead and answer Sabari's question about being 33 in multiple years.
So 6-year experience at IT for facilitating your family business. How much should I mention? So your how much experience you mentioned is more about like what you've been doing full time since you graduated from your undergrad or postgraduate degree. So even if you've been doing the family business simultaneously with your full-time job, that doesn't make it twice. that doesn't make it 12 years. So it is about that much experience in IT. And then you've also been doing this as like a consulting project or as a board member or, on the side. Chances for 2-year MBA, oh my God, if anyone answers that question in a forum like this, then they're lying. Like there's a lot that goes into evaluating it. So I think Jen can send you the profile evaluator link, and then I think our team will use that, or she'll tell you the next steps about the chances situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can set up a time to chat after this. I'll be posting a link for setting up an appointment for anybody who's interested. And Sahil, I know, just hold on your question. I will definitely be answering it here shortly.
All right, let's keep going. Cover letter. So cover letter, like I mentioned before, it's about saying, this is who I am. This is what I'm passionate about. This is what makes me interesting. This is why MIT is interesting to me. And this is how you and I can come together to do something fantastic. That is the gist and the flavor that you want from your cover letter. And so that, obviously I made it sound easier than it is, but ultimately when you get to it, it's 3 paragraphs that like essentially talk about this. And you include one or more professional examples that illustrate, which is again saying that this is why I'm strong, because here's an example of something that I did. And that's where giving specific examples really helps. This is also the place where being specific about the resources at MIT that you will leverage will come in handy. And that's the letter that you write. Again, this is a slide where I would need more specific questions to respond, but also, it's pretty simple and straightforward in my opinion. Okay, we have another slide on it. Great. So share information you believe is most important for your candidacy. Obviously, again, like I said, if your story and the passion that you're stating is healthcare, then try and sort of make everything aligned with that or with the functional area that you're looking for. Specific examples would be great. The final paragraph must have something about what you believe you can contribute to the school's community. And then why Sloan is specific is best for you. Is it the action labs? Is it the certificates? Is it the culture of collaboration? Is it, the location and what it offers? Is it the alumni network? Is it a combination of these? It needs to be very clear, like why Sloan is right for you. I would also frame it as, I would also like to understand, without you telling me, why another school is probably not as good for you. Like, let me put it that way. And that's how specific to Sloan it needs to be. And then avoid beginning with my name in as I'm seeking a place. Yeah, I mean, you can say something very simple about like, I'm excited to apply to the program or something, but don't go on and on about, don't waste like valuable real estate and like just reintroducing yourself. They already know you from other parts of your application. And then don't brag your accomplishments. Again, remember Sloan especially is a very humble school. Show them through your accomplishments how great you are, but don't say things like, I am potentially the best analyst to have ever worked at my level. Not that you might do it, but I have seen a few where people tend to use adjectives to describe themselves. I would say use numbers for impact.
Great tip.
Video statement. This is actually my most favorite part of the Sloan statement because, people really come alive in a video and, you can actually let your personality shine. If you have a very specific area of interest so for example, I work with some people who are in the aeronautics space. And so they actually have a background in their company or their workplace with airplanes and everything. And that makes for a fantastic background and they can talk about that. Last year, I worked with somebody who successfully made it, who was an equestrian. So she actually did the video standing next to her favorite horse. And, so you can do things like that. Now, what if you don't have something like that? Or what if what you're thinking about doesn't, you can even just do it on a plain, solid gray wall background, and that's fine too. But really, it's got to be about you telling them very briefly, what is it that makes you so interesting? Is it your passion? Is it something that you're looking forward to? And say something more about it and how you can bring that to Sloan or what you look forward to at Sloan. So that's really, in a nutshell, what the video statement is about. And for different profiles, it might pan out differently. In some cases, we might encourage you to share a few dimensions of yourself, like a few interesting different types of hobbies that you have, just so, you can balance out a very serious sounding cover letter. Or in some cases, because your cover letter is already like very fun and like, you've done all these crazy things, we might advise your video statement to be a little bit more serious about what you hope to do at Sloan professionally. So that way, overall, they come together and complement each other. So that's the idea for the background, for the video statement. And yeah, be as authentic, of course. Topic is you, delve into your personality. Oh, wow, I already went through all of this.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of this we've kind of already chatted about. So it's okay that we can quickly breeze over a
Yeah.
lot of this.
And yeah, just the don'ts are important. Like, don't just repeat the same thing from the cover letter. Like, a lot of people feel like you just have to restate what you said in the cover letter, but in a fun way. No, the content does have to be complementary. So it can be on a similar theme, but don't say exactly the same thing. If you've given a leadership example in the cover letter, then don't repeat that. Say something else about that, or vice versa. Org chart. This is a crazy complex org chart. Wow.
This is the example on the MIT website. So I just put it here as a visualization, so that you can kind of see what they have kind of set a bit of like expectations as to what they kind of want to see. And then the next slide has your device.
Gotcha. So if you go back to the example that they've given, one thing you'll notice, and this is something I have to tell everybody, I'm glad they put the example, is that the candidate has to be vertically below the head of the organization. So don't put the candidate like some like here, 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 and here suddenly, right? Like make sure that they are arranged below. With the recommender, it may be possible, it may not be. So that really depends. But I would say like it's okay to even simplify. You can see how like they've not really given names for any of the side columns. They've only given designations there, but there are names for the main column. So that's a good level of like the generic versus specific question that we had before. And then the ones you're managing, that's actually very exciting. And this might actually throw off a lot of people because a lot of clients do not have direct reports. So it could even be dotted line reporting, and that's okay. And you can, just like put like a single box if you want and say cross-functional team of like 25. If it's too complex, it doesn't have to be, so specific over there. But yeah, that's the standard template. But then on the next slide, so yeah, they want to understand like, where you are in the hierarchy, how much impact you have, how many people you impact. And then, as much detail as possible, but like you can redact names. You don't have to put names if you want. Just make sure that they can identify you and your recommender very easily. I think that's a simplest thing to indicate. So yeah, that's it.
So this is the one essay where I was like, let's wait for Sahil had a question about having setbacks in his bachelor's degree, and maybe talking about failing. And I was thinking that the optional essay might be a great spot to actually talk about this. So do you want to talk about how you utilize the short essay with your clients, and then specifically MIT?
Yeah. So for in general, the optional essay is the place where you would be talking about any kind of extenuating circumstances, either related to health or related to academic performance that might have put you back or set you back. And what you would use it for is to basically say, for example, suppose you have a low GMAT score, then you would say that I'm writing the optional essay to explain to you that I do not believe my GMAT score reflects my true potential. And this is why, like, maybe I'm not a very strong test taker, and, I've historically not been great at being on the spot, but I have dealt with a lot of analytical complexity at my workplace. Here's an example. And I've also like presented in English in very strong professional forums. Here's an example. So that's the kind of stuff that you could say in there. The MIT optional essay is a very specific question about how the world you have come from has shaped who you are today. This is them trying to get a better understanding of your background and like what kind of an influence it has had on you. Firstly, I strongly recommend everybody to write this response, like for my clients at least. And that's, again, my specific approach, because you should use any and every opportunity they give you to highlight something unique about yourself. And you can, talk about, for instance, how something cultural specific. And I work with a lot of people from, the Middle East, from Africa, from India, from China. And the Oriental cultures or the Eastern cultures sometimes have different kind of family structures and hierarchies that might pose different realities for women or men or both, or for people from different sexual orientations or underrepresented minorities, and how that might have impacted their outlook on life or their professional experience or their goals, and would be interesting for people to know, right? So that's, I think, or different economic considerations. So that's what you would put in this response. But you can also link it with either poor academic performance or a bad GMAT score or something like that if you want. Or you can just keep it optional without the background part of it. So you can just sort of say, I would like to explain my leave of absence from work for 8 months as I was working on, a company that did not take off. And, this is what I learned from the experience. So give it a positive spin. They just want to understand, hey, there's a huge gap. Were you just sleeping? Or what were you doing? So I think it's more of them trying to understand like what that gap means. So I think that's how you would use that specific response.
Excellent.
All right, recommendation letters, who to pick. I'm going to do a quick quiz to see how awake everybody is. You look at all these options and tell me which one do you think should be the recommender. I'll wait for a few responses before I talk about it.
Excellent. And then while we are waiting for people to review them, we do have some questions that I haven't answered yet, but I think we can answer kind of in the general Q&A and get those going after we get done explaining the application itself. Right.
Yeah.
Ashita says the boss.
Okay. We'll wait for a few more, but should we take a few other questions meanwhile, or do you?
Yeah, we can definitely. So Vishy had a good one about she's seen the phrase "I'm excited to apply"
too many times.
Overused.
So, well, firstly, don't worry if it is overused, because there's only so many ways you can start a formal cover letter. So it's quite possible no matter what you do, other people are they're not going to say, oh wow, Vishy has not had a unique beginning to the cover letter, let's reject him right away. So don't worry too much about it, but you can say, for instance, I'm honored to apply for a spot in here, or as someone passionate about XYZ, the Sloan MBA program is a perfect place for me, that's why I'm applying. Or you can say, I'm looking for so you can have variations of that. And that, again, depends on the specific profile. That's the reason I'm not giving you too many other options, because that might be specific to a profile. Consulting the org chart for Sinaga is, it can be the latest project that you work. It can be project-based. I think they talk about that in the rules also, I think, if that's how you work. So we have a few responses. Oh, wow, we have a few people who think university professor. No, the answer is boss. It is your direct supervisor. It does not. It should not be the university professor, especially if you're applying after, like, as someone who's working, instead of for the, what is it called, the 2+2 program.
The deferred MBA.
Each school has a different name, but if you're applying in the final year of your undergrad, that's when they specifically ask you for a university professor recommendation. But if you're applying as a working professional, never a university professor, because they cannot fire you. The whole requirement for a recommendation letter is it has to come from somebody who is able to fire you. And that's when they are able to honestly, genuinely comment on your skills. And also someone who's worked so closely with you that they can actually speak to your strengths and weaknesses. So boss is the only response in there. None of the other responses are correct. If the boss is not possible, so if you either don't want to tell your current company that you're applying, or if you only started recently working with your direct supervisor, or if you don't think they would appreciate it, then you can look at maybe an indirect supervisor or a previous supervisor, but that's it. Never anybody else. And never somebody just because they have a better designation. Nobody cares. Nobody cares if it's a CEO of the company. If he doesn't know you, how can he recommend you? So I think that was a simple slide with just pause, unless people have any questions.
I
Okay,
think we
so
covered most of this too.
yeah, I think so. So like choose them early so that way you know and they know that this is coming up. Um, recommendations have to be super specific and detailed. Like they literally have to be. Um, let's take Vishy's example. Vishy is one of the most natural leaders I've ever met. An instance is in July 2017 when we were working on this project. This is what I saw. This is what he did. This is what happened. All of that. So it's got to be super duper specific, and that's one of the biggest things that I have to work with my clients on. And we get into how we identify weaknesses in your profile in the cover letter or like in the resume, and then we try to balance it out through the recommendation letter. And also how the recommendation letter in some cases can re-emphasize some of the numbers that you're claiming in the resume. So it's actually a very powerful document that needs very specific attention, and you want somebody as a recommender who is willing to work with you to get to that level of detail. So that's the thing. In case of family business, it could be a board member, a director. Client is tricky if you have no other option at all. I've had a few people who've done client, but like it's basically like if the client does a bad job of writing it, then you can terminate their contract, right? So that's why it kind of gets a little tricky there. But I recommend a board member who's not from your family, or a director, or someone else in that situation if possible. If not, a client is the best option then. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Whew.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Yay. Well, thanks for sticking with us through that. So now we have a couple of questions that didn't get answered. So first, I'm scrolling way back. Sabari had a question. Oh, no, we did answer that one. Trying to think. Randy Harris had a question. If I am working 2 full-time jobs, one in the startup side and the other is a business that I co-founded in transportation, how should I demonstrate my uniqueness? Is this fact diminished? Does it diminish my application?
No, it doesn't diminish your application. I think it's more about you just have to show. So, firstly, you cannot be working 2 full-time jobs. That, by definition, doesn't make sense. A full-time job is where one of them is a full-time job and the other is like a side project or a passion project. Like, no one can realistically do 2 full-time jobs just because of the time commitment that's necessary. So, I would think about prioritizing the one that is either by definition a full-time job or a salaried job, or the bigger one with the more impact, and the other one you showcase that as, in the additional interests, something that you co-founded to sort of like engage with it because you're passionate about it. So I think that's the way I would approach it. I've rarely seen anyone who's ever able to say that, especially one is logistics and the other is transportation. Like those are big sectors, so I would not recommend calling them both full-time.
Got it. Okay. Ashita had a question about freelance work for an international org and being involved with the international clients. So she add that, or should Ashita add it to the resume if they were doing that while they were working full time?
Freelance work is always great, and it shows like a different dimension to who you are. You can highlight a different skill, or in your case, maybe the fact that you have international exposure or like cross-cultural interactions, stuff like that. Yeah, I strongly recommend adding it. Yeah.
Excellent. And so here's another question Zahir has about international Army officers having 15 years of experience or more. And then I do have a lot of questions about scholarships. So I think that the other day, again, that whole conversation with Donna Levinson was talking about where you see the average or the mean years of work experience does not limit you and who should apply.
Yeah.
Right. And I think maybe you can talk about that too, if like people who've been more seasoned in your class.
Yeah, so especially from Israel, where they have mandatory 5 year of serving in the army, like there's a whole bunch of them who apply and get into Sloan every year. So you definitely should not hesitate to apply just because you have 15 years of experience. And the army gives you so many avenues for leadership, analytical rigor, collaboration, like all of those things. So don't think of it as like not corporate experience enough or something like that. Just like use the same experience to showcase that.
Yeah. I would say that the USB schools really value military experience, whether it's
Yeah.
US or other. And even if there's current conflict, I think that they still give quite a bit of latitude to anybody who's been part of the military.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, and then wow, the questions are really amping. So does MIT prefer candidates from big brand companies than from startups? No, absolutely not. That's the reason I said give a strong company description of what your company does, and if that's interesting, and if what you're doing is interesting, what you've achieved is interesting. I've had so many classmates of mine, and I had never heard of their companies before, or like they had just done startups. And trust me, those conversations sometimes are far more interesting than someone who comes from McKinsey.
Yep.
Any differences between applying for round one versus round two? I mean, well, not in terms of scholarship opportunities, I think, but in terms of admissions process, if you're from a very competitive pool of candidates, then I strongly advise round one, simply because they would have seen or taken some people like you already. But if you're coming from a unique, unconventional space, then it's fine. If you are about to get a promotion that's going to make your candidacy much stronger for round two, or you're doing like some fantastic project that you really want to highlight or something, then that's fine to do round two. But otherwise, if there's no reason at all, then I would always recommend round one.
I would also caution about MIT specifically that they do tend to over admit, and over the past couple of years, round three has had close to zero admits just because they're over admitted. In fact, like what was it last year? Sriram had a fantastic candidate that he got admitted to the program a year in advance because they didn't have any seats for him in round three. So they went ahead and admitted him for fall 2022 when he applied for 2021. That's insane.
Yeah.
What are some activities we can do to improve our candidacy before we approach the deadline for applications?
I mean, usually these things have to be planned well in advance. So like if you're asking me now in June, and I mean, you can try taking on a new leadership project at work and specifically talk to your recommender and say that, hey, I'm planning to apply. It'll look good on my resume to have like a high impact project. Or like in the place that you're volunteering or doing something on the community side, maybe you can like take on like a leadership role in something stronger. But that again depends upon like what's missing from your profile. Like it's not about just leadership everywhere. If like everything else you're doing is already leadership, then maybe you should do something that's analytically rigorous. Or maybe if there's both, then you should do something that's a lot about communication, presentation, speaking, negotiation, things like that. So it's really a function of what might be the weakest link in your application and how can you use that to bolster it. So it's there's going to be a lot of questions. I'm going to give advanced disclaimer. I hate to be the guy who say it depends, but it does. Because unless we see your profile in detail, we really should not be commenting, not even should not be commenting too specifically. So I'm going to have to give slightly vague answers. I apologize in advance.
I think the other thing to talk about with activities right before you apply is that MBA admissions committees can see through if you just join a ton of different organizations right before the application cycle. If you do decide to do something new, it should be tied to what you're already passionate about, so that I like to talk about like building a thread of your story of like how it continues from, college through professional life and your personal life. And so it needs to go along with that story and what you're passionate about. Even if it's revisiting something from college, like if you were really into dog rescues when you're in college and you decide to rejoin later on, that's something that makes way more sense than, starting to do something completely different. So that would be the only other thing. And then I think that the other part of this is it's now time to invest in the research process of like making sure that this is the right fit for you. So now is the time to start networking with students and alumni, and you can start finding those cross-sectionalities between you and what you want to do and students who have accomplished this or accomplished something similar, or can help you with building that story of why MIT or whatever school it is important for you, or whether they're good fit.
Yep.
Okay, and I know that we had a couple of questions about this before. So somebody mentioned MIT Sloan Fellows. So really quickly, MIT Sloan offers several different programs. One is the full-time MBA program, which is 2 years. They also offer a 1-year full-time MBA called the MIT Sloan Fellows Program, where the average years of work experience is closer to 18 to 20 years of experience. And it's not just about experience, but it's the leadership experience. We're talking people that have been more at like the C-level, director level for many years, managing budgets, and then looking to do the full-time MBA to go into a deeper or a higher leadership role. And typically they're sponsored by their company. There's not as much like career support as a typical full-time MBA. There is some, but not the same as like a full-time MBA program where they have people coming to campus to recruit for that program. So the MIT Sloan Fellows program is a bit different. They also offer an executive MBA program, which is part-time, so that if you are kind of at that 10 years plus and still wanting to work at the same time. And then when we look at the average years of work experience for a full-time MBA, minimum is usually going to be 3 years, I would say, right? Sure.
I've
Some
had
of them say 2.
classmates. Yeah, I've had classmates who've been either just 2 or 1 in some cases. I it really has to be a sense of, here's the thing. If you feel like you've had experiences that make you reasonably mature as somebody who has 2 to 3 years of work experience, have seen some leadership, have dealt with a few challenges, are really trying to figure out and can really take value from an MBA, I think you should definitely apply. But if it's more about like, oh, if I don't do it right now, then like, life is going on and like, I need to get married, my parents won't allow me. If it is stuff like that, then don't. Like, it's really got to be people, they have to see why you specifically need an MBA and need it now. And that I think is the biggest question, more than the average years of experience. And if you've done like a whole bunch of different things and it's taken you 10 years to settle down into like one thing, and now you've started flourishing and you feel like that's where your career is now going, and now is the right time for you to do an MBA, you can apply then. Like, these averages are just averages, but there's obviously outliers for a reason.
Yeah. And I think that 10 years is typically the higher end of years of work experience.
Yeah.
When we start edging on that, it starts becoming experience that's too advanced to be either coachable or expandable from a full-time MBA curriculum, and that's why it's kind of iffy with MIT, since you can kind of create your own curriculum. It might work out really well if you can pitch the story the right way. But I think like when we get over 10 years, you definitely want somebody to help build that story with you to make sure that you have a compelling argument as to why a 2-year full-time MBA is the next step.
Yeah.
Vishy, do the accomplishments have to be in the current year you're applying? Absolutely not. They want to see that you have continuously been, making contributions and accomplishments throughout your career or experience.
Yeah.
Okay. And then again, financial aid. Somebody asked, like, does MIT offer loans?
Yeah, MIT they have a federal credit union. And so, I mean, my personal experience was I was applying when I was in India. I grew up there and I was working there when I applied. And they did not even need any collateral. They just like pre-qualified me for a $170,000 loan, which I used for my visa documentation. It was a breeze. And once I got here, they just like put me onto it, and it was just super, super easy. So I just, based off of that experience, I think MIT is one of the easiest places. And then when I bought my first house, they even gave me like a discount on my interest rate because I'm an MIT alum. This is great. Like, financially, I think you're all set.
That's great. And then what about scholarship? I mean, I don't know if you have your personal experience. I mean, obviously we have clients who got scholarships, but
no. So I mean, there's a bunch of scholarships you can get before the 4-Day Foundation for Women. You can get like, there's a bunch of them listed out there, the McKinsey scholarship and things like that. That you are different countries might have their own things. Like in India, there is the J.N. Tata scholarship for higher education that you get. I think it's 4 lakh rupees. Last I got that, I think they've increased the amount now. So there's like different things that you can apply for. I actually became a Siebel Scholar after my first year at MIT. So that was a $35,000 scholarship. And then I also became an MIT Tarda Fellow. And so they sponsored my entire MBA, and they also paid me a stipend every month. And, so there's scholarships you can like look for like on campus and just do your research in Google. But I mean, well, I want to be respectful to all financial situations, but I mean, the MBA value is like way better than, just having to look for multiple different scholarships. So if you have a loan and they give you very low interest rates on student loans in the United States, it is, in my opinion, reasonably easy to pay it back if you're going to get like one of these like top jobs and stuff like that. But if your financial situation is different, of course, I'm very respectful and I understand, in which case you should do three types of research. One is look at the Sloan application. I think in the application form, they probably mention a whole bunch of these and they say, do you want to be considered? Do you want to be considered? So there's that. Then you look at scholarships you can get after your first year, like the Siebel Scholarship, like the, the McKinsey Award or something like that, and what the qualifications are. And then you also look for in your home country or your home locality, things that are there to support people, going in for higher education. For candidates in the United States who are, do you want to talk about the consortium, Jen, briefly?
Oh, yeah. So there is the consortium, as well as Forte Fellows. I think Forte, I guess, is kind of international. Consortium is US based specifically for minorities across different realms, and they help simplify the application process for member schools. And so if you apply to, I think actually, if you qualify to be part of the consortium, you can use the tool and portal to apply to several MBA programs across the gamma within the US. And it creates a streamlined application of there's a basic question you have to answer. And then most member schools will either have you answer all of their questions for the year of the application, or they will ask you, one or two of the questions, just depending on like a simplified version. And then you have one portal for letters of recommendation and such. And you submit all of your information and documentation through the consortium versus the school website. So if you are a minority in the US and you're considering applying, I would definitely look into the consortium. We've had many of our candidates get admitted to MIT through the consortium, and many of them also got large scholarships and full rides through that as well. So it just depends on different organizations as well. Did that cover it?
I think so, yeah.
But MIT, so like most of the top MBA programs, when you submit your application, they're also going to consider you for generic like merit scholarships. So what happens is when you receive your offer letter, they will either include an offer for scholarship or say that you have been considered for scholarship and you'll get your scholarship offer within the next 2 weeks. So usually they try to give you plenty of time for making sure that you have your scholarship offer for making your decision between schools. So that's also generic, and you don't need any additional applications for that. I think that we answered all the questions, although there was one about parking. Do you have any insights about parking at MIT with a car?
So it's funny that I live 3 miles from MIT right now, and I have not bought a car in the last like 10 years because it's such a convenient city, Boston, with public transport. And, I'm going out and having fun all the time. So, it's just a pain to have it. But of course, I mean, like in your dorms and stuff, like there will be parking, you might have to pay a little bit for it. I don't know exactly how much, but yeah, there are people who maintain cars on campus. In general, if it's in the city, it is an expensive city to park in. But other than that, if you live, for example, in like one of these off-campus places, many of them are advertised with parking. So then that way you just like, it's like baked into the rent or something. But get rid of your car, like unless you need it for a baby or something, like, don't use a car. It's a great city without a car.
All right. So I think that's all the questions. If anybody else has any other questions, I'm going to kind of start wrapping things up. You will notice that on the screen is our website, aringo.com. We have so many resources. Sriram and I were talking about this. There's just like so much information on the website, but we have all kinds of insights to the applications, the essays, writing your resume, a lot of free stuff. But if you're interested in working with a consultant like Sriram, let me know. I would love to meet with you and talk about your profile and see how we can collaborate and work together. This is my Calendly link. You can schedule a time to chat via that link anytime, and we can kind of see where we go from there. Sriram, closing words?
Yeah, quick one. Jen, do you also want to post the Calendly link in the chat so it's clickable?
I will have.
If you can, that'll be great. But in conclusion, I would say I think MIT for me personally has been an unpredictably transformational experience. So what I thought about in terms of what I can get from business school before I joined, and then once I joined, Sloan has just been completely different. Jen, I think you put that in private chat. You probably want to put it in the comments.
I did. I can't actually comment on the public chat, but I'm hoping that Abhijit can help me out. So sometimes I'll give it to him there, and he can post it for me.
So yeah, for me, it's been insanely transformational. I would encourage everybody to think about that, and then really speak to people from the school who've recently graduated, are currently studying. Many of them are very helpful to just like have a quick conversation to see if it's the right place for you. Obviously, by the nature of social media and YouTube, there is a ton of videos out there about different kinds of advice for the application. 99% of that, in my opinion, is either incorrect or half correct. And when people come to work with us at Aringo, sometimes I have to just spend the first week or two making them unlearn all of that stuff and all of those misconceptions. That's one of the reasons I do this work, because there was so much false information available out there that when you actually go through it and then you realize that this is not about like clickbaity stuff. This is not about like, oh, do you want to get into MIT? Let me help you now. You have to do this and this and this. You have to stand out as like this leader, that leader. That's all complete BS. Do not listen to that. Every profile is unique, and you just have to be you in the application, which is not easier said than done. And that's what a consultant helps you with. So do not go for all kinds of random advice that you hear out there, because then you're just going to be a generic template when you apply. And MIT especially is one of those schools that really wants to know you genuinely for who you are, with your faults and with your low points. And that's what makes you interesting as a candidate. So I would encourage you to think about just being who you are when you apply. And more importantly, I think writing these essays and answering all these questions for business school applications was a very powerful moment for me personally, because I never sat down to write all of those or think about like a long-term vision for my career. So it's just been a very enriching process overall, regardless of like the outcome of that. And so I hope all of you enjoy that process and find a partner who you can work with, who can help you enjoy and really learn much about you and come out a much more enriched, confident, and individual with a vision for your career. And that's my wish for you guys. So yeah, all the best with everything.
Awesome. And then I'm not sure if Abhijit is on, but hopefully he can post the link. If not, sorry, you'll have to type it in. I'm Jenifer with one N, but you can always email me and I'm happy to set up a time to chat as well. Try not to make it too hard to make contact. And then, we're here. I mean, you have Sriram who's going to push you hard to like really work on your application. And then I'm here as your cheerleader to cheer you on. Sometimes when it gets really daunting, the MBA application process creates so much doubt. It's really hard to sometimes see through it, and having a partner to get through it is definitely something that is beneficial.
Yeah.
All right. So the last question I see is about application fee waivers. I don't know that I've heard of MIT offering fee waivers.
Yeah.
Have you?
Mm-hmm.
I know, like.
I mean, unless you're from the consortium or something, in which case you're part of one of those programs. then I think they waive it. But otherwise, you can always write to AdCom and explain your
Mm-hmm.
situation and see if they do. But I just have not heard of anybody, have that requirement.
Yeah, I know that like some of the schools, like Cornell, if you attend a webinar, they usually give you a waiver for attending. And I think that has to be their specific webinar, not one that you attended like through a third party organization. So that's the only way I've ever heard of people getting them.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that concludes everything. Again, please give us a thumbs up, share our video, and share the wealth with your friends as they get to dive into MBA admissions this fall.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for attending. Thanks for all the great questions. And thank you, GMAT Club, for having me and Aringo.
Yes. Thank you, guys. Have a great day. Bye.